Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here representing Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about the fact that you can maximize all your possible muscle growth with the most basics of exercises. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like down below, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you're not following or subscribed, please do so. And if you'll be kind enough to drop me a comment down below, I'd appreciate it so much. Let's get over to the point. And this is something I think people forget. Again, they've been so clouded by what guys look like using lots of drugs that they've forgotten that back in the day, guys built great physiques without access to really any of the equipment that people think of as modern stuff. They didn't have machines and stuff. But I think people forget that. They forget that machines didn't even really become a thing for lifting. Yeah, even a lot of the cable type stuff that people have. All these things didn't really exist. Until well into like the 70s, maybe around 1980-ish, the Nautilus machine and stuff came into vogue. And before that, people just didn't really have access to many of these things. And yet they built phenomenal physiques, okay? They built phenomenal physiques. And I'm talking Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu physiques. That's once gear came in. But think about, it was right after that when even the Nautilus machines hit. And guys weren't necessarily getting better physiques as a result of it. They just started adding more drugs. But if you go further back, go look at like the silver, bronze era bodybuilders and athletes. Those guys had amazing muscular development, pretty much maximum size that a natural is going to get. Okay? They were as big as you can possibly get natural, and they had the most basic stuff. I'm not saying they didn't use dumbbells and things too here and there. But realistically, those guys had barbells, they had weighted body weight exercises. Go look at what their routines looked like. You start reading through it, you're like, wait, it's squat, bench, deadlift, pull up, overhead press, and cleans, pull ups, chin ups, dips, some calf. Or they did their calves with a barbell half the time, right? They just did barbell calf raises. These guys had just these absolute most basic of equipment. And they had no trouble maximizing muscle growth. And I'm not telling you to disregard these tools. I mean, you literally going to see me using a reverse hyper in here. I own a reverse hyper. I bought one. Okay? I paid over $1,000 for that thing. I mean, so I'm not even hating on necessarily all machines. But what I'm telling people is none of it's actually necessary to reach your goals. These are objects that can be convenient. They can be convenient. But I would argue that in many cases they're inferior. People get so hung up in the, well, it's isolating different stuff. But why do you need to isolate different stuff? There's no evidence. Like even you have the evidence-based circle of the ones who push this stuff the most, right? Is that not who does it? Is that not who does it? The evidence-based crowd? Yet their own studies confirm there's no benefit to isolation or machines or any of that. When they make the argument, this study showed that they can be equal, that isolation movement can cause just as much muscle in the primary mover as a compound movement. Yeah, but it's only causing the growth in one muscle. And they're forgetting that. And I think what people are forgetting is trying to isolate things doesn't matter. Once you start going to failure, or you get very close to muscle failure, or the weight gets heavy enough relative to your intensity, what do you even see on EMGs? And I think this is a point people miss. And I think this is going to sum it up when you really think about it, what happens when we start going to muscle failure on stuff, or very close to. And I think the bench press studies highlighted the most. When they looked at competitive power lifters, right? So they have a high neural drive, and I think this is a big point. This is one reason I tell guys, it's why Christian Thibodeau tells people this. And he's got a master's in this, and he's a great coach with a great physique. That, the neural drive will pay off to more hypertrophy down the road. Well, what do we mean? When you see any of those EMGs hooked up to powerlifters, what do they find every time? Their closed, medium, and wide grip bench all produce the same effect. What? You can't tell them apart. So we're over here talking about, the closed grip is the tricep more, the wide grip is, okay, true, that is true. in a lower level of exertion. But when they've hooked them up to actual powerlifters you compete with, they weren't necessarily elite, they were just competitive powerlifters. So they trained maxes, right? They have a high neural drive. They couldn't tell them apart. The pec tricep ratios were all the same once they got heavy. There was no difference. They all had the maximum activation. It literally hit all the muscle fibers in the triceps when they measured it and the pecs. There was no differentiation. It wasn't a different ratio. What about when benching has been looked at? The long head of the tricep gets touted as being missed on the bench press, right? It's usually what we point out. Yeah, it works the lateral head amazingly well. In fact, some of the studies show that it grows the lateral head more than an extension does. Okay, fine. Obviously, the chest gets hit hard. Well, what happened, though, when the neural drive gets high enough and it got heavy enough? Start hitting 90% and above a 1 rep max. The long head gets fully activated. What? So this means that literally, if we're just training hard enough, these basic movements work all the muscles, and they're not shortchanging them. I think people have noted similar even on overhead pressing. They're like, if you get really strong at the overhead press, even your side delt blows up. Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then we're sitting here wasting, resources on these other things. It doesn't mean wasting. I'm not saying you can't do them. Like, I'm not telling you to skip laterals if you want really great side delts. Okay? It's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is, if you look at the real world evidence going all the way back, and you look even what they find with some of this stuff in the lab, is that you don't have to. That's the point. You don't have to if you do not want to. You can literally build every muscle in your body with nothing but barbells and weighted body weight movements. And you can build everything from your calves to the long head of your tricep to your side delts on these basic exercises just fine. Okay? Especially once we start hitting a few different angles. Okay? It's a matter of personal preference, but it can totally be done. And people say, well, it's not efficient. Well, it actually is pretty efficient. It's just hard. It's just hard. It's actually super efficient. So especially you start going to failure, close to failure, start getting really heavy, really strong, high neural drive. You start doing multiple sets. Yeah. Okay. This is what happens, and it's pretty provable. Now, and I'm not telling you, oh, you have to do this way either. I'm saying is that the option is there, and it can totally be done, and there's no disadvantage to doing it other than it's kind of hard. That's it.